All right. Suddenly I can't hear myself. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, what?
Welcome back to GrokTALK. That's Bob Seeger. Yeah. Okay.
I thought it was Howard Dean. Yeah.
Welcome back to GrokTALK, brought to you by,
It is
GrokTALK.com
that time of year.
and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, coming to you
And he's coming
live
out of the woodwork
almost
too.
every Saturday from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hi Max, how you doing?
Great. Good morning. It's great to be here.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Max.
All right, well, Medicaid expansion was supposed to be a temporary deal with a sunset provision. Well, that's how it was originally sold.
Every expansion of government is a temporary expansion.
That's a good point.
Like the taxes in Pennsylvania after the floods.
Or World War II withholding.
Or the Spanish-American War with the telephone tax, which we just lost a couple of years ago.
Yep.
All right, so you're a House legislator. You there every week and inside and.
So Sean Jasper, probably the biggest crook in Concord. And that's saying a lot because there are a lot of crooked politicians, but there are a lot of people there who are trying to do the right thing, believe in what they're doing. But Sean Jasper sent out an assurance that no one believed that he was not going to back Medicaid expansion. Jasper has used the power of the majority office and the Speaker's office to get rid of 4 different Republican women who wouldn't vote with the Democrats. In 4 different instances, Lori Sanborn, Tammy Simmons, and a couple of others, they voted Republican. They wouldn't support Jasper's 8-cent per gallon gas tax. They wouldn't support his fee increases. They wouldn't support any, one bill. And so he said they're off the reservation. And you throw them out of leadership or you pull them off their committee. So Jasper, as much as the Democrats like to hold Jasper out to be civil and professional and a really nice guy, he's probably the biggest bully in Concord. I've never seen a politician boast about it. So anyway, long story short, Medicaid expansion. Ted Cruz has been talking about Medicaid expansion, what a bad deal it is. But there's a whole lot more.
Didn't he address the New Hampshire House this past week?
I didn't see him.
Okay, then he talked about it in New Hampshire. I wasn't quite sure.
He was at an event,
But
we put up the video.
he's spoken at a number of events now. One in Nashua, one in I think Salem, and a few others. He's been speaking against Medicaid expansion. He's been very much against Obamacare and Medicaid expansion in Congress. He has a very good voting record. However, one of the issues that's been missed is the way that this particular bill has been written. And this is the 3rd iteration, and I've read all 3. They all have vague language written in them, so that even though on paper it says that they sunset, they don't really appear to sunset. In other words, there's always some back door where it makes it possible for the program to continue even after the feds pull the funding. Now, I'm not against accepting federal funding if the feds are going to pay for it. But what happens with every single federal program is, whether it's Bill Clinton's 100,000 cops on the street, special ed funding, CHIF, you name it, the feds run it for a few years, and then all of a sudden they pull the rug out from under you and you're stuck with this huge liability. The problem with Medicaid expansion is it's something like $240 million a year liability. And that would only go up over time as medical costs go up.
Yeah, we talked about
Actually,
this.
it's much higher than that. They're expecting it to be more like a $480 million liability.
Once
Yeah,
per budget.
I posted.
Oh, yeah. If we end up paying for half of it, it's going to be closer to $280, which is horrific.
Yeah, the official note, official fiscal note associated with Representative Joe LaChance, who famously decided to call out our Susan Olson that. Of course, Obamacare's Medicaid expansion is settled law and wouldn't take the advice of her saying, no, the Supreme Court shut it down. So I've been
Back in
writing about
2012.
Yeah,
So,
you're
This
right.
is not
But anyway,
recent.
that is showing just a major increase to the general fund, as we talked about earlier, of an additional $50 million a year. But you're right, that's if the feds keep paying, and I've heard right from the get-go, since they passed Obamacare, that percentage is going to go down. And that's where we get, we get the crony capitalism with Jeb Bradley Care, because he's made monopolies of where the hospitals are, so now they can charge whatever they want, so they can give voluntary contributions back to the state. I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen when the hospitals say, It's voluntary. We don't have to. And I want to watch the Republican heads explode.
Well, what's really weird about this is these hospitals are supposed to be nonprofit. And if they can swallow half of what Medicaid expansion isn't covering, what the feds aren't covering, where are they getting the money from? Why are they nonprofit?
That's a huge profit on which they're paying a huge tax, which isn't really voluntary.
Yeah, well, all of these hospitals have undergone rather large capital expenditure programs over the last few years. I know where I'm from, LRGH totally redid an entire wing. I mean, this was a massive expansion of money, and yet they were crying poor mouth for the previous 3 years of huge losses, relatively speaking. Where does this money come from? And all you can say is, one hand is feeding the other. There is a lot of crony capitalism going on here in New Hampshire because you can't spend what you don't have. Well, they're spending it, so it's got to be coming from somewhere.
Well, I think it's going to end up getting passed through to the insurance companies and to the patients as insurance premium increases.
IMAX.
Well, that's
And that's a tax in a way. I mean, we're not going to call it a tax, but it really is a tax.
This is the nature of GrokTALK. Go ahead.
17 state legislatures have rejected Medicaid expansion. States all over the country have rejected it, and nearly all of the states that have caved in and taken the Medicaid expansion funds are now finding that their out-of-pocket or out-of-general fund expenses are much, much higher than expected. Their mandates are more expensive than expected, and there are more strings attached than they thought.
And
So
that's what's important, because a lot of this debate
Yes.
about local control and federal money comes with the strings. It's okay, they took our money, all right, maybe our Congress people aren't doing a good job of keeping them from taking our money, but now they want to give it back to us. But we only get it back with conditions, and those
Right.
conditions are awful. And you've always told the stories about sidewalks and swimming pools or skating rinks or whatever your town took
Gazebos.
federal money for. They have to maintain it forever and ever and ever, or the government's going to come and say, write us a check, give us our money back. It's not their money,
plus
but
interest.
plus interest. So the strings are awful. The rules, the regulations, the abuse of the regulatory state, all comes with that cash. So, I mean, while it's okay to take federal money for some programs, I suppose, I wouldn't want to do it unless you didn't have to deal with all of that.
And we frequently find every year in the state budget process, every time someone finds a way to do things more efficiently, there are always strings attached from some old federal program, grant, donation, something from some of them 50 years ago. 50
Yes.
years ago, and we're still stuck with these mandates, and it creates continuous upward pressure on the budget. So who knows what people who want to retire in New Hampshire or open up a business here 10, 20 years from now, what is that going to do? And if we have the legislature continuing to accept more and more federal funds for nice sounding things that are going to result in huge liabilities, then that tells you that if you move here, your business profits tax, business enterprise tax, commercial property taxes are going to be much, much higher 10, 20 years down the road. So do you really want to spend the money moving to New Hampshire knowing that your tax burden is only going to go up?
Yeah, well, the thing is we see this cost shifting, and the politicians at every single level are always complaining about, well, they're going to push that cost down to our level and down and down. So, federal government to state government to county government to local towns. I got news for you. What they all want you to miss, and I've said this for years here and on Granite Rock itself, it's us taxpayers looking up through these various levels. It doesn't matter where the mandate's coming from. The taxes are always going to come out of our pocket, and if they do the shifting like they are with Medicaid expansion, where the hospitals are going to voluntarily give money back to the state, I'm sorry, that is an artificial cost put on the hospitals by government, although they're in on the game. Who gets to pay for it in the end? We do, either direct payments or we have to pay higher premiums or what have you. It's always the consumers that pay for government spending, regardless of how it's initiated, regardless of how it's filtered, and regardless of how the politicians lie about it.
And where they dress it up, whether they take it from businesses or whether they take it directly out of our pockets at the state level, or whether it's federal dollars, it all comes out of our pockets.
Right, so this nonsense that Medicaid expansion here in New Hampshire is not going to cost New Hampshire taxpayers any more, that's not going to cost at all, is a crock, because almost all of us are federal taxpayers. And that's what I mean about this. Everything rolls downhill to the taxpayers.
You pay your taxes yet?
If we care about our country, if we care about the $20 trillion national debt, if we care about the $26 trillion in unfunded entitlement obligations, we've got to stand up now as a state and say, No more. No more to Obamacare, no more to socialized health care, no more to government takeover of our daily lives, of our doctor's offices, of our insurance, of
and no,
healthcare,
no,
hospitals.
and no, 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 and hell no to any federal government mandates. All of them are illegal and unconstitutional. They all should be dumped, and we shouldn't take any money from the federal government.
But that's the problem. You know, Max is talking about what's going on with Sean Jasper, the Democrat-appointed Republican, nominally.
Don't call him a Republican.
Yeah, Speaker of the House, and we see what's going on in the state Senate, and they keep spending. We see the same thing with Republican majorities in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, and they keep campaigning about lower, smaller government, lesser spending, and all of that stuff, and yet they keep passing all these higher budgets all along. It's like Glenn Reynolds of Instapundit is famous for saying, a thing that is not sustainable won't be. And at some point that now it's officially $19 trillion in debt. The interest payment is going to go up. It is going to swallow the government. And it will stop at some point. The problem is far more people will get hurt then than if they started slowing the spending down now. But they're not going to do it.
The view from the grassroots, which is not very far from where you're sitting in the House, is that this pretty much Medicaid expansion thing is a juggernaut that nobody can stop. Is that true? Are we stuck with this? Do you think there's anywhere in the legislative process where this will get hold up?
The only place where it can be stopped is in the State House. It's coming up for a vote. Was it Wednesday or
Next
Thursday?
Wednesday.
It's coming up for a vote. We have a lot of bills coming up. This is the hot, contentious issue. It's going to come down to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 votes, some people think. We're doing the counting in the committees, what they call whipping. They talk to Republicans. The vast majority of Republicans are against it. But there are enough rhinos in there that they could potentially pass this. Now, expandnh.org has a state income tax calculator. And you can plug in the facts and figures and see the state income
Coded
tax.
by this young lady right here.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Emily Sandblades.
You're welcome.
It has a state income tax calculator. When, not if, when the feds pull the rug out from under us, what state income tax or state sales tax, I think a state sales tax would be even more destructive to our economy than a state income tax. But anyone voting in favor of House Bill 1696 needs to be voted out, primaried, and if they win their primary, we need to vote them out in November. We have to let them know beforehand. Call your legislators, email them, tell them, look, this is the most important vote of the year for me. You vote against 1696. Otherwise, we will eventually be left with some type of broad-based tax after years and years and years of fighting against a state income tax. We have the Democrats and once again the rhinos under Jasper and his crony buddies.
And Bradley.
And Bradley, Jasper, Hinch, Flanagan, all these rhinos who love to vote for this big government stuff and then act like they're Republicans. Most of these guys come from safe Republican districts. So they know they can't get elected running as a Democrat, which is the easy way most of the time if you're backed by the lawyers and union officials and bureaucrats and people who are on the take. The easy way is usually to run as a Democrat because there's a lot less active involvement by Democratic voters, or they're very, very emotional voters. However, when they're coming from a safe Republican district, what do? They go to Republican events, they don't say very much, and then they just kind of sit back and let the process put them in office, and they just sit there running again and again and again.
Yeah. And it is starting to filter into the Republican base as well. Because I met, and I posted this up last week, I ran into somebody who's been an activist for years, ran campaigns for local Republicans in the Lakes region, and he said, I'm done. I am tired of working to get people into office and just see other Republicans act like Democrats, voting, as you said, for the gas tax, for this Medicaid expansion tax. I mean, not the tax, well, soon to be tax, but Medicaid expansion. This is one of the biggest agendas on the Democrat list of stuff to get done. And this time, both of those two things were not done by Democrats, but by Republicans.
They are done by Democrats and rhinos. Rhinos are just corrupt politicians who say, why not run as a Republican because it's so easy?
Right, but it's the Republican Party that says, we are for opposite of those things, and then the Republican Party says nothing.
No, all of us real Republicans vote no.
No, I'm talking about the Republican Party,
It just-
the NHGOP.
Okay, But don't call these rhinos Republicans. They are simply corrupt Democrats. That's all they are. They have no interest in the well-being of the public. They don't care about AIDS, traffic accidents. They don't care about the safety of the public. They don't care about local control. They don't care about free markets. They don't care about principle. They are there to steal vote after vote after vote after vote. And committee after committee after committee, we're seeing them play the same games. All the Democrats and rhinos are twisting your words around and lying and pushing the same big government, George Soros agenda over and over and over again. And we've got to get involved in the primary process in September and vote these criminals out.
Yeah, sure. So it seems to me, one of the questions we should ask these so-called Republicans is, you are nominally against Obamacare. You would like to see it repealed. What are you going to do when the congressional dog catches the Obamacare hubcap and actually destroys it? If we ever actually get a majority with a spine in DC, and this thing goes away and gets replaced with free market economics. You have built this structure in the state, but based entirely on sucking down federal money that is, never mind is going to go away because that's the way of government programs, it's going to stop dead. You're going to go cold turkey. How's that going to work, guys?
Yeah, they keep claiming that if they stop Medicaid expansion right now, then there'll be 47,000 people who won't have any insurance all of a sudden. And the question is they're expecting it to expand to 58,000 people in the next 2 years. And then when Medicaid expansion fails, you're going to have 58,000 people that you have to deal with their insurance issues.
Right, so 10% of the New Hampshire electorate is going to be chained by the ankles to state government.
Yes, and it's like an addicting drug. I mean, the first sample is free. And that's pretty much what the pattern has been.
All right, we're going to call Ralph Benko from the American Principles Project. I'm having a problem with my toot sounds today. And we're going to talk about the gold standard and a little bit more presidential politics in relation to monetary policy. So everybody hang in there, and we will be right back after I push these buttons.
GrokTV.